We don't know how long he's been here, but he's been a POW for a long time. And he's just waiting to be rescued. And I hope it happens for you, buddy. Okay. So I get asked all the time, Josh, what radio I should get. I've thought about it a lot before I put it out there. I think that if you're looking at spending less than $200 on a radio and you want a lot of really advanced features, but you also can be just a dum-dum and just do straight up easy features, the radio that I'm gonna say to get is the Ailunce HD2 from Retevis, okay? It can be as easy as you want and as complicated as you want. It does everything from the very basics all the way up to DMR with AES 256 encryption, so you have really low probability of intercept. It does things like adjust power a lot. It has a lot more power flexibility than most radios, so you can go all the way down from 0.5 watts, which they call hotspot mode, all the way up to 10 watts. And where I like to operate is 0.5 watts always. You always want to start at the lowest power setting. So to me, that's a big advantage of having this radio. It's analog and digital. And that's huge because that opens the gate to a lot of interoperability. So it'll work with a lot of different radios on there. So this is a good radio just to keep in your truck or in your kit. It does it all. A ham operator can use this, or a guy who's never done anything ham in his life but just wants to talk to his buddy. This is it. Their interface is a Motorola interface that's waterproof. So a lot of times you get these, for instance, like UV5R, the Baofeng, everybody knows the Kenwood 2-pin, etc. When you put that in the radio, like the pins, and then you have the cable going up and you then put it in a pouch and then you're moving and yanking, what happens is you get torsion forces, and over time it breaks the radio. Basically it makes your interface unusable. It either breaks the Kenwood 2-pin connector that we're putting on, like Disco's putting on there, or it messes up the radio itself. And a lot of the cheap radios, you have to think, if a Baofeng UV5R costs you $40, how much do you think it costs them to make it? Way, way less. So it's a great little radio to start out, but it's not really for a preparedness radio. I wouldn't recommend it as the be-all, end-all. If you're just starting out, that's cool. But if you want to spend $150, this is the way to go. All right. So when you put this connector, it screws on and stays on, and that goes in your kit and it's not going anywhere. Okay. And then it maintains its IP rating. So it's still IP67 with the connector on. A lot of these radios, what they do is they'll get tested for IP67 with the accessory connector on there, and you'll see there'll be a little gasket around there, and that's what they've done. As soon as you remove that, that is done. You have an ingress point into the radio. That's why most professional radios, you will see a side connector like this now. It's just based off of lessons learned, and this guy's got it. It's got some heft to it. It feels just like a Motorola radio. Like any public safety guy that looked at this would be like, this has the form and fit of that. It feels very professional. It is not a toy. It's a professional tool. You're not going to need any kind of 3D printed apparatus to keep it from changing channels or stop it from the push-to-talk going off. You're not going to need it anymore. There's not going to be any flashlight on the top of the radio. I don't know what people's obsession with putting flashlights on the top of radios are, but it's not going to all of a sudden under nods start shining in your face and everyone in the whole county is going to see you. That's not going to happen. And it's extremely programmable. So all of the different functions on here, like a lot of public safety guys would probably recognize this as like an emergency button. It can be, or you can change it to something else, which we'll talk about in a second. We'll talk about the computer programming software for it. You have a push to talk on the side, which basically, press to talk. And then underneath there's two accessory buttons, which you can then change to a lot of stuff inside the software. The encryption is a big deal. So for a long time, we've been searching for a radio that has encryption in it, and it's not perfect, all right? It's not like a military level of encryption with thought put into things like being compromised, things like doing over-the-air refills, things like where you're pushing this out to a big group of people. What it does have, though, is it allows you to store a bunch of different crypto keys in here that you can then turn yourself. But you can't fill the radio without a computer, and you have to generate the key yourself. And it's not very hard to do. You're able to, I would leverage something like ChatGPT or something to help me through that. But very easy to manage. So there's like 3 levels of encryption that are in this thing. There's 2 that came with the HD1. And then now with this firmware update, it's AES-256. So you can generate an AES-256 key and drop it in here. And you can drop several of them in here for different, whatever reason that you want to do that. And it stays stored in the radio. So you can basically take a master radio, come up with a code plug in there, and then you can program all of the radios in your group exactly the same. So you have interoperability. So if I go to, channel 1 on this radio and channel 1 on this radio, they're both completely, they're both programmed to each other, and I have a group of like radios. So it doesn't matter which one I grab, the settings are all gonna be the same basically. There's no amazing way that is out on the market that is just like, hey, this is a real simple way to do things that guys in the military would be used to doing. But this is the easiest, lowest hanging fruit way to get some of those capabilities to you. So you have to do it on the CPS, which you can download through Retevis. It generates a code plug, which you can put in the radio, or you can share with your friends, send it over email or whatever, and you guys can all have the same thing and be interoperable. This has a really big band. So it does VHF, UHF, which is very important. You don't want to get stuck in one part of the spectrum because UHF, ultra high frequency, VHF, very high frequency, they propagate a little bit differently and they're better in different environments. A lot of people will just like a rule of thumb say that VHF is better in rural, UHF is better in urban. There's a lot to that, and it's kind of like, some people look at it like magic, but it's not. It just has to do with the size of the wave and what it can get through and what it can't get through. But it's important to have both there and be very flexible because it allows you to talk to other radios. So say your buddy bought something and got stuck, like maybe he bought a Hytera radio and he's stuck in VHF or he's stuck in UHF, and those are great radios, right? But they're going to be stuck in one part of the spectrum normally. With this, you can talk to him on VHF or UHF if you had to. You could drill down to an analog frequency and still communicate with them. Does a lot of other little things that can really increase interoperability. One of them is you have something called promiscuous mode on this radio, and you can attach it to one of the side functions. You can turn it on, and if you turn it on, it basically allows it to accept any. It'll basically give you audio of any channel that is talking on that specific frequency, regardless of like its CTSS tone. And sometimes guys will get a little bit confused because they'll have like radios that are, this is at 420 megahertz, this one's at 420 megahertz. I'm trying to talk, but I'm not hearing anything. A lot of that stuff is caused by like a CTSS tone. This, if you turn on promiscuous mode, it just makes it a lot easier for you to just get that in and communicate. Because really we're trying to use these to enable teamwork. That's all they are, teamwork enablers. So we want to be able to make sure we can talk to all of our buddies and do it in a somewhat secure way. So when you get into the digital side, it really gives you some advantages over somebody who is going to be on the analog side. So on the analog, we're transmitting. There's a continuous carrier wave that comes out. It's modulated. The other radio receives that, demodulates it, and turns it into audio that you can then communicate with. And it happens the entire time. So when I press the push to talk, it's transmitting carrier waves going out. Other radios receiving that, and there it goes. Anybody with like a little police scanner, like the oldest police scanners, the lowest level signals intelligence that you could possibly get to can pick that up, okay? The guy down the street is gonna pick that up. When you add digital to it, it just adds a layer of complexity. Nothing is unbreakable, nothing is 100% safe, but what you're trying to do is decrease the probability of intercept by adding these tools. So when you go digital, the radio takes that, what you just said on the radio, disco 3.4, this is disco 3.2, let go. The radio takes that, turns it into digital, samples it a bunch of times, and then transmits it out in time slots. So it's not transmitting continuously. It's like on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, very, very, very quickly. And all that does is increase your or lessen the probability of somebody intercepting you. The other cool little trick this radio does is it can go very low power. So there's something called hotspot mode on this radio, which basically pushes it down to 0.5 watt. And that is what I would use for inter-team. I would always be at 0.5 watt until I had to not be at 0.5 watt. You can increase, you can go 0.5 watts, 1 watt, 5 watts, and 10 watts. I believe that's it. Yeah, so the other thing too with DMR is it increases battery efficiency because of the less amount of transmit. So the battery is using the most power when it's actively transmitting. So if it's only transmitting in like, I hasten to call it burst, but it's typically a burst. It's like a little burst of data. The transmitter is getting used less and less and less rather than on analog mode where as soon as you press it, it's transmitting the entire time and the radio is really using, that's like the most power intensive part of using the radio is transmitting. Another cool little feature is that, and this is on a lot of them now, but it's USB-C. So you can just kind of like your water plan where like you've got to do water resupply and this is a big deal. A lot of guys now, power harvesting is like a big deal. We have to get power for all of these tools and finding like interoperable ways to do it is pretty difficult sometimes. And really the easy button there is USB-C. And this has USB-C. So you can recharge the radio from anywhere you can get USB-C. So power bank, solar, whatever, you just plug it in. You don't need the cradle charger, although it does come with like a cradle charger. That to me is a very, very, very cool feature. And it's coming out on a lot of the new ones. This is not novel to this radio, but it is there, okay? There are things in this radio too, which are like night mode. So you can press a button and it's gonna dim everything down to like the bare minimum that it'll go where it's still readable so that you're not like pulling it out like a UV5R and lights are going everywhere. There is you can turn off all of the beeps. So you can have the radio in the settings where you're touching buttons. There's no beeping or anything like that. A lot of guys will dig that. This will do a lot of things, all right? There's Bluetooth in this. The Bluetooth can connect to a few different audio devices, but out of the box, it comes with a little Bluetooth earpiece, which is pretty cool. I wouldn't wear it because it's not my thing, but like for somebody who's doing like low vis or something, you kind of just like I don't know if that's even an old dad with a Bluetooth thing on his ear, from back in the day. That's what you look like, but most people wouldn't look at that and be like, oh, this dude's working a radio off of that. So it's another way just to like lower your signature a little bit. So yeah, the battery levels I talked about before is 0.5 watts, 1 watt, 4 watt, and 10 watts. Huge deal is front panel programming. There's a lot of radios that we looked at that were like really good and had a lot of feature sets, but they didn't have front programming off. And I say front programming, I mean that I can take this radio without a computer and I can hand jam and get a frequency going. And a lot of the cooler radios don't have that, or they expect you to use a third-party device. This has it. Now, a caveat to that is with the encryption, if you're gonna put keys into this thing, which are basically just a bunch of characters that you're gonna put in here, which is basically a password that this radio is gonna have and this radio is gonna have, and they need the password to decrypt the communications that are happening back and forth. You cannot do that from the front panel on this radio. You have to do that from the computer programming software, but you can add a bunch of different keys into this radio so that if there is a probability of like a key not being good anymore, a key being compromised, you can rotate to another key. All sorts of cool stuff about the radio, but the big ones are encryption, front panel, analog digital, huge memory bank, front panel programmable, waterproof interface. That's a legit waterproof interface. It's not like, for instance, like the UV Pro that a lot of guys like. It's pretty cool how it works, but it's only analog. It does talk to like your smart device and stuff, but when you take the cover off of the accessory panel, it loses its IP rating. This will not. This is going to be good to go because you're basically attaching an accessory that's then providing that gasket around there to keep that thing waterproof. And that is something that adds just to the overall durability of the radio. So yes, you can send your position encrypted to another radio with this, all right? I don't go into the specifics on how to do it in this particular video, but you absolutely can get your GPS fix from the radio and then transmit that encrypted to another radio over DMR. And you'll be able to have some situational awareness of what's going on. And I think that's like one of those advanced features that most guys really don't need, and they'll have better ways of sharing SA than doing it through the radio, but it's absolutely there. And you can absolutely send text messages through the radio, but it's one of those other things, like there's probably better ways to do that, like on your phone through Signal or something like that, than doing it through the radio, but it's there if you need it. I think it's super cool. I've been messing with them for a while. Disco has like 10 of these now, and we use them for all of our just stuff. Like we're down here at Darcy right now. We have a bunch of them that we're running through a bunch of stuff with, and we have like really, everybody who uses it when it's all set up has really good things to say about it. So if you are the dude that is kind of the comms nerd for your group of people, and you're looking for the thing, and you're trying to hook everybody up, and you're trying to do it at a price point that's not going to break the bank. Like if you have $10,000 to do every single radio, brother, this ain't your radio. There's some other radios that are out there in the public safety market that you can go for, and it seems like you may be doing something that you may need that kind of stuff for. But if you're looking to spend like $150 a radio, you're looking to get really professional features, you can buy it on Amazon. You can get it like 2 days from now. This is the radio to go for. Pop this thing apart. You're going to see the frequency ranges, 144 to 146 megahertz, which that's down in VHF, and then 430 to 440 megahertz, which is up in UHF. Cool thing about this radio, with a quick Google search with a little googly, you can see that there are firmware options where you can open up the band to maybe some places where you typically wouldn't transmit, but it might be advantageous to you to transmit depending on your licensure or what you're up to or your level of debauchery. And it'll open up the band a little bit for you so you have a little bit more to work with. You just definitely don't want to get stuck in a radio where it hamstrings you to a certain part of the band, either very high frequency or ultra high frequency, because radios are they're separated by those a lot of times because there's specific reasons you'd want to go either way. And I think I mentioned it before, but down in VHF, typical for rural environments, you know, we're out in the woods, we're doing whatever. UHF is a little bit better for urban environments, extremely rocky environments that are very condensed, because how the waves come out of the antenna allow themselves, they basically, the higher the frequency, it's kind of easier to go through man-made structures and stuff. Lower frequency, it's a little bit harder. All of the prime real estate for getting through buildings and stuff is all pretty much taken up by cell phones and things like that. Those would go through buildings really well, but you're not going to get that in like a two-way radio that's commercial off the shelf. So I'm pretty confident in saying that this is the one for now. If people have better options, go for it. I mean, if you can afford it, go for it. But if you're just trying to be a prepared guy that's like wants to help out your neighbors, wants to make a small team, wants to go out and get their gun on, go train, do whatever, this is the one that I would recommend you get. I wouldn't recommend you go and buy like a knockoff Chinese Harris radio that just looks the funk and doesn't do shit. I would say get the thing that is a Chinese radio, but does everything you want it to, and is built like a brick shit house. That's the one that I would go through. And it really allows you to grow with it, because you go from very basic capability down at just like the analog, single channel, I talk to you, you talk to me, all the way up to the DMR, AES encrypted, you know, low power, super Gucci stuff where you're looking to like hide in the noise floor, do all the things that you'd want to do as a more experienced communicator. So yeah, it's the one that it's the one that I have. You know, I do have access to like really cool radios and all of the things, but like the reality is this is just an easy button to smash that gives me 99% of the capability at like 10% of the cost. Right now, the ground truth right now, this is it. This is the one that I would recommend. And I think that you'll be happy with it if you get it. Guys that have them already, let us know down in the comments section, like how you're using them, how you're doing it. TTPs, it's good. Keep communicating with each other. Build code plugs, put them out there. If anybody has a really good code plug for this and they want us to put it up somewhere, let us know and we'll throw your code plug up and give you credit for it. And that could become like the thing that ties everything together. So always remember, the only reason that you have this is to enable teamwork. All right, is so that you and your little groups of friends can coordinate to accomplish an overall objective. It's not just something to be cool, to have the best one, to have the super long whip, to have the fake looking Harris radio, like whatever. It's an actual tool to help you with a really, could be a very serious problem. So when you're making the choice to do it, make sure you're looking at it from the lens of somebody who's a more professional user. Don't necessarily believe everything that you read on the internet, or don't believe me. All right.